So in part one, we got the main body, we got all the piecing done. So in part two, we are going to assemble the bottom, get that top stitched, get all of that put together, sew the main body onto it, top stitch it, and then we're going to get this top exterior band. We're going to get that put on and top stitched. In this next segment, we are going to construct the bottom of the bag. So we're going to need our exterior bottom pattern piece. We will need this for doing some marking. I also have my piece of bag stiffener. Now this is optional. I'm not sure exactly, this is a different, Texon is the brand name of this bag stiffener. It also goes by the name of Bontex. You can probably get it, I know I get mine from Tandy Leather. So it comes in a big roll, not very expensive, but it's quite stiff, and it's very much like cardboard. So this is not suitable if you are going to turn your bag like through a pocket or something like that, what we call birthing the bag. This will not work because as soon as you bend it, it's bent and it won't straighten. You can't merely press it to get it to straighten or anything like that. It's done. This is great for drop-in linings. Now I'm going to be using vinyl. So I've got my piece cut out of vinyl, and I also have my piece of foam. Now I will tell you that my testers have tried other products for the base, and they found that it didn't work as well as the foam did. So just note that they were using, I believe, Decovil Light, and I think one did try Decovil, but it was way too heavy. So my suggestion here is definitely to use the foam so that it has the stability to hold up the rest of the bag. So first of all, what I'm going to start off with is I'm going to just do some marking and some trimming. So I have on you will notice on your pattern pieces that there's some little X's. Now I've actually just used my hole punch and punched the holes there. And I used just a white chalk marker and just kind of squiggled in each of the holes to mark this. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that or not, but I can see my little marks and threads. So I'm going to start off with trimming out this. If you haven't already done that, it was in the instructions, but if you did not do that, then do that now. So this is, I'll tell you, this is 3/8 of an inch in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip up to my dots and trim that, and I'm going to trim out in between. This will help keep a little bit of the bulk out of the corners when you have to turn it. Now I'm going to put my pattern piece on my piece of vinyl, and once again, where those holes are, I'm going to mark those 4 corners. What this is going to be, and I don't know if you can see that or not, that is going to give me my placement for my bag stiffener. Once again, I'm going to use 303 I'm going to spray this piece with my 303 and I'm going to glue it down. So I have my 303 sprayed onto this side, and I'm going to use my marks as my guide. And that looks pretty good to me. Okay. Now, if I want to, or if you want to put, use bag feet, now is the time to do that, to install them. So if you want to do bag feet, I've just marked, this is just suggestion. It is quite a long bag, so 6 would be a good number to use, as opposed to just 4. It might sag in the bottom and still touch the floor. If that's the purpose, is to keep the bottom of your bag off the floor if you set it down. So now you would mark and install your feet, I guess, as per the manufacturer's directions. Okay, so that's that. This is stuck down now. Now I'm going to basically do the same thing. I'm going to glue this down. So I'm gonna put my spray glue on my foam, and then I'm gonna press everything down and get it adhered really well. Okay, I have my 303 sprayed on the back. Now I'm going to try and do this very carefully to make sure that my positioning is good. So I'm going to say that the bag stiffener is somewhat optional. If you don't have the Bontex or this heavy bag stiffener like I have, and it's not an important thing to you, don't rush out and buy some. You can use Peltex or just something that's a little bit stiffer. I like the structure that it gives the bottom of the bag. Instead of sagging, something like this gives it a really nice firm base. All right. And my foam is hanging over a little bit. I'm going to trim that off because it's a little bit sticky. All right. Now, once again, I'm going to place this on this side. What I have, this is a special pen. It's from Tandy. It's silver. It's meant for marking leather. It does, it sort of wipes off. It doesn't always come off really, really well, so I don't use tons of it, but it shows up very, very well on dark surfaces. So again, using those 4 corners, I'm just going to make a little mark. Okay. Now I can just see, but I can also, yeah, you can see a little bit here that you can see where that heavy interfacing is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be top stitching across those 2 lines, and this is an optional thing. I like the look of it because it gives it a nice place to fold and it holds everything exactly in place. So I am not going to be sewing through my heavy interfacing. I'm going to be sewing right on the edge of it. So that's why I have my marks done there. So I'm going to be, when I go to my sewing machine, I'm going to start here. I'm not going to back stitch. I'm going to leave longer threads and I'll pull to the back. but I'm just going to go stitching all the way down to the end here, and again leave a tail, pull it through to the back. Then I'm going to go to the other side and do the exact same thing. So I'm going to use and you can see, there we go. That shows really quite well. It's not exactly that easy to see when you're at your sewing machine, but it's important just to try and stay straight and up against that edge. But the straighter the better. This is where using your zipper foot would probably be helpful. So when I'm using my 2010, I have the automatic thread cutter, so it cuts the threads really, really short, and that's okay too. All I did, instead of leaving tails and pulling them through, was I just did one stitch back, one stitch back, one stitch, and then continued on, and then just did one stitch back and forth. So I don't go back and then forth. It's just one little stitch. So there's the very end just kind of ties everything off. But I want to make sure that those don't come out, come loose later on. So I'm just going to add this little tiny bit of security. It only takes a second. I'm just going to use a little bit of fray stop or fray check, whatever. If there's long threads on this side, I'm just going to leave them, but I've got a couple here. I'm not going to pull on them. I'm just going to snip off. There. So that is that. So now I have, you can see it just, it bends really beautifully. Right exactly where it's supposed to. Now this is going to form a box bottom, okay? So this is what we are going to end up with. This is going to be, we don't want to just fold this in half, not with the Bontex. If you're using Peltex or something like that, you've got a little bit more give here, but I really don't want to bend that bag stiffener too much. So I'm just going to be really, really careful about this. And I'm going to just get this and put some clips on it so it holds it in place. I'm going to clip down here as well. It'll give it a little bit more. And I want to keep, because I want to keep it kind of out of where right where I'm sewing. Give myself, at least now when I go into my machine, I can back stitch here and go forward without having to take clips off immediately. Now we are going to be using, from here on in, it's a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to go down both of these sides. Okay, so I have my seams done here. Now again, I got a little overzealous, I guess, with my glue. But I'm going to pull this back and I'm going to trim as much of the foam out of that seam allowance as I can. This is not the reason I'm trimming this out is not because of thickness of having to sew over it, as much as it is just that I want these seams to lay flatter. There we are. Okay. So, I mean, if you want to, you can, if you want to top stitch those down, you can. You can glue them down, you can do whatever if you want, double-sided tape, or you can just leave them as well. So now, now that I have that bulk out of this piece, now I can just finish up making that boxed bottom. And again, we're going to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And we're going to, I always start, go back to the corner and then come forward and then back and then cut. And do that on both sides. Okay, so here I have my seams done, and I am just going to, I'm going to be gentle about this because I don't want to bend the cardboard or like that bag stiffener. Such a beautiful corner. Okay. Again, just be a little gentle. And I've got just a little, there we go, loose thread there. So that is the bottom of my bag. Pretty simple, straightforward. So now we have our bottom is ready to go, and we have the main part of the body. Those are all assembled. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this back so that it's inside out, inside right, inside whatever, so that it's the wrong side is facing outward. And I want to make sure, now I have directional fabric, or some of my fabrics are directional. So for example, I've got a mannequin, and I know that this fabric is all directional, so I want to make sure that that is facing up. So this is going to be the bottom edge. Okay, so I don't really have a preference as to the front or the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of fold this in half. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the bottom edge. I'm going to fold this in half, and because I don't have my marker right here with me, I'm just going to put a clip. Okay, so that's going to mark my sides. So I'm going to match that up with my seam, my side seams. So I'm going to put that inside here, match that up, put a clip on it, go. I mean, we've got a little bit of kind of wrinkling here, but that's just because we've got one on the inside, and we just need to work it in, just ease it in a little bit. It'll fit. There we go. Now this it's not that hard to sew this, but you are going to end up having to kind of move this over, and it's easiest if you sew from the inside as opposed to trying to get it underneath and sew it this way. So here, just sew. You will end up having to kind of hold your bag up as you go all the way around. And if you have difficulties, if you're having problems with your seam allowance, take 2 runs at it is the trick. Take one at 1/4 inch or whatever. Just be concerned first of all with making sure that these 2 edges are even, and don't worry about how straight your seam allowance is. If you take a narrow seam allowance, once you have that seam allowance in there and everything is in place and it's exactly where it's supposed to be, then you can go around it one more time at the 3/8 inch, and then you're worried not so much about placement of where your layers are at because they're already together. So then you can just go around one more time, and all you're worrying about is making sure that seam allowance is nice and straight. So there I have it. Mine is all sewn on. And once again, I'm going to pull back my foam and I'm going to trim it off. I'm going to do this on both sides. This is on the inside, this is the bottom. And I also have my foam on the fabric exterior. So there again, I'm just going to pull that back all the way around and trim everything off. Okay, so I have my foam all cut out, trimmed away. It's still stitched in, so it's still holding that way, but all the excess is out. So now I'm going to gently and carefully turn this out. So there I have this. Now the next step is going to be, now this is going to get a little bit tricky, and you might say, well, there's got to be an easier way of doing this. Well, there sort of is. There's different ways of doing this pattern. You can do this pieced one. There's an option of, I've given the measurements for doing like 2 panels so that you would have side seams here, or you can do just, if you had a really great fabric that was just had a seam or something like that all the way around, and you only wanted 1 seam, then you would just have a seam up the back or wherever you choose. So this method will work for something that is in the form of a tube. So if you were going to do like a 2 panel, so you had a front and a back with side seams, then you very easily could sew your panel onto your piece. Let me get, here's a reference. So if this was actually my the bottom of my bag, if I had this all assembled, this was my vinyl and everything, I could take my the panel, sew it onto here, and sew the other side onto this side, then fold it and top stitch along here. So and then do the box bottom and everything. This method is going to work regardless. I mean, you can do the 2 side seams together. One of the things, sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over here trying to explain. One of the things about this is that doing it in this method, even if you had a side seam here and were using the 2 panels, this will always be even if you do it this way. You would have to line up your seam to this side seam. That's not a problem either. It's totally your choice. This is you're going to be, well, once this is top stitched, that will help as well. But this seam will be flatter for the side doing it this way, as opposed to if you had, if you sewed the panel onto here and onto the bottom and then sewed the side seams and then boxed it in, this side seam will be flatter the way that I'm doing it. So total personal preference. It's whatever you want to do. So now this is going to be, and I have the 2010, so it is a flatbed machine. Yes, it's easy, or it's possible to top stitch in here. Now I'll give you a couple of tricks, because I know that there's lots out there that have, whether it be the Jukies, the Brothers, the HD9, the Genomes. If you fold this back first, it makes it a little easier. If you fold it halfway, it makes it a little easier to get it into your machine. So, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, because we don't have the option of the open arm, you're going to have to just kind of open this up. It gets a little tricky going around the sides, but just take it slow and you'll be fine. So I always like to top stitch on my vinyl. So I'm going to fold this down toward the bottom, and I'm going to top stitch all the way around. Well, I don't know about you, but man, I sure worked up a sweat on this one. Anyway, got it done, and I think the top stitching looks pretty darn good. I am very thankful though for my cylinder arm when I have to do custom work, that's for sure. Anyway, so that is the bottom, and I can promise you that is the worst of it. You've gotten through the worst of it, so the rest of it is just going to be smooth sailing. Before we sew the side seams on this exterior top band, I'm going to mark my fold. So this bag is a drop-in lining. So we're going to kind of, I guess, essentially finish the top of it before we get everything all completely assembled. So this is going to have a 1/2 inch hem on it, I guess, or fold. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark at 1 inch. I'm not sure if this will work. Yeah, that will work. Just using kind of a chalk pencil here. Guess I could finish that line. I'm going to do that on both, and I'm going to make sure that that is my top, so I don't sew that part on to the main body of the bag. And I could actually even go one step further on this, because everything is laying flat right now. I could put my double-sided tape on here, or I can do it after I sew my seams together. That might be that'll be easier. So that's what we'll do. So I'm going to match my edges, and once again, this is going to be a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to get my double-sided tape ready. Okay, so I have my side seams done here. Now I'm going to share something with you that it was life-changing for me when I figured this out. It's probably been figured out before. I'm sure that there's much smarter people than me out there, but I haven't ever seen this trick. So I know that I'm going to end up having to fold this over at 1/2 inch, or at 1/2 inch, or I'm going to end up with a 1/2 inch fold. Well, this always gets really bulky right in here, and especially when I'm using leather. Like this vinyl isn't, it's nice, it's quite soft and quite thin, but when you get into heavier leathers and stuff like that, making that fold is really, really hard. Sometimes it gets very, very bulky in there. So what I figured out was, now this is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to be doing this at the halfway mark. I'm going to go up to, but I'm not going to snip my thread. So actually, you know what, I'm going to just zoom in here so you can see exactly what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to just cut a little notch out of this. So now, I'm up to, not even quite up to my thread, but now when I open this up and fold this, it has taken an incredible amount of the bulk out of there. It's just, to me, it's life-changing. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. So now I'm going to, I do sell this double-sided tape. Zoom back out. I do sell this on my website. This is really good tape. It sticks very, very well. You just don't want to be sewing through it because it'll gum up your needle. But if you keep it out of your seam allowances, then you're golden. So I'm just going to snip this other side here. And then I'm going to put my double-sided tape actually very close to my line. Because when this gets folded over, I'm going to be top stitching up at the top up here. So this should help keep it out of the seam allowance. There we go. Okay, so now if I want to, I can pull my tape off and fold everything now, or I can do it later. This tape sticks really quite well, so I'm not too worried about when I move my, like as I'm sewing and stuff like that, that everything will come unstuck. So again, just gonna fold down to my line, which ends up sort of being right about where my tape is, at the bottom of my tape. Also, I guess doing this now leaves no doubt which side should be sewn. So here we go, and I guess I should have marked both my top and my bottom, but so once again, 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once that's on, we're going to fold this up, and then we're going to top stitch on this side. This side won't be hard at all. So now I have my top exterior band put on, and I've got it all top stitched. That one was really quite simple. And before I go any further, now if you have a badge, now had you wanted to put your badge on the bottom here, I guess the time to do that would have been before we sewed this on. But I tend to like to put mine up at the top or even here, and I am going to put in, you probably have seen these by now. Oops. I can't, there we go. These are our new Doodabug. Well, sorry. These are the new badges that we are making. These are stainless steel and we're doing laser engraving on them. So this one is an antique one and I have my Doodabug logo on it. So check out the website, of course, if you're interested in ordering something like this. We do custom work. All the prices and everything are there. And so I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna rivet mine on. These are rivet on badges. So I measured, it was 16.5 wide. So that means from my seam here, I'm 8.25 would be center. So, and I'm going to center mine this way as well. Of course, could do better than eyeballing it too, but I'm just going to mark my holes and I'm going to punch my holes and rivet that sucker on there. And so there I have my little badge is riveted on. That looks pretty cute. So pretty happy with that. And that is the exterior.